The Boston Celtics come into this regular season without any championship expectations, and it hasn't been like this since probably 2022 when they made the NBA Finals. It's been championship or bust ever since then. So it's going to be a change of scenery. And as a Celtics fan, what is going to be my expectation? Or I should say, what's the best case scenario for this roster? Because you look up and down this team, they don't have Tatum for the year because of the Achilles injury. They traded Drew Holiday because, again, they wanted to get under that second apron because a lot of penalties there by staying in that tax bracket. Then they traded Porzingis. They got George Niang and flipped him for another trade by picking up RJ Lewis Jr. And on top of that, you let Al Horford walk. Cornette got signed he got signed by the Warriors, and then Cornette got signed by the Spurs. So this roster isn't the same. Yes, you still have Peyton Pritchard, which you're hoping that because he's getting the starting nod for the Celtics, he takes a leap this year. Let's talk about Jaylen Brown for a moment because I want to focus on him first. If he can become a reliable number one option where he's very consistent, the efficiencies through the roof, where he's not constantly turning the ball over. I don't want to have that expectation because I don't think it's going to happen. I think there's going to be nights where Jaylen Brown is a bona fide number one option, and other times he is not so good on certain nights. Doesn't mean he's a bad player. I just think he fits better as a secondary option next to Jason Tatum. But if he can go above those expectations and he can get the Celtics team to 47, 48 wins and they're top four in the East, that's a W. Should we expect that when Tatum returns? No, because the roles will change. Because Tatum's going to have the ball in his hands. You have to share the scoring between Brown and Tatum. Now, I still think it'd be a good thing because now for the future playoff runs the Celtics go on, Brown can turn into that number one option at times when Tatum doesn't have it in the playoffs. So I think that could bode well for the future when it comes to the Celtics trying to rebuild a championship team. Another thing to keep in mind is Peyton Pritchard. Could he have an all-star level season? I think that would be a huge W. Do I think he'll make the all-star team? No, but I think if he can just get his game to a level where he's getting you 20, 23 points a night, and he's that reliable scoring point guard. Maybe he takes a little bit of a leap in the playmaking department. Now you got your point guard. Now I understand he's undersized defensively, but he's a competitor. He's a bucket getter. And if he takes a leap, that's very good for the Celtics, especially if we want to move him back to the bench and be that sixth man. And they can find another point guard who's better at the point of attack on defense, because I believe they will struggle in that department because Derek White is better off the ball and blocking shots. He's not the best perimeter defender, but he plays a specific role with this defense. I expect White to have a great season. And the other thing is you got to hope guys like Shireman takes a leap, just shows flashes of potential. You have to hope that Hugo Gonzalez gets some type of role. Jordan Walsh shows some potential. And the hope there is one of these guys breaks through. I'm not saying they have to be a reliable third option, but show flashes where you have 5 or 10 games of playing good basketball. You can take that sample size and flip it for a trade for a more reliable role player. So let's just say the Mavericks call up the Celtics during the trade deadline because they need another point guard or another guard. And the Celtics go, well, you want Shireman, and let's say they want Simons because his contract will be attractive because it's an expiring option and he can just walk at the end of the season and people can, or teams can shed salary. So that might be something Dallas is interested in. So the Celtics go, okay, we want Daniel Gafford. Obviously got to match salaries, but that helps out the Mavericks because you can give them maybe a guy like Payne Pritchard. People might not like that, but what I'm getting at is they need a big man. You can't rely on a Luka Garza or a Boucher. Boucher is going to be a nice fill-in this year, but I still think the Celtics need reliable post play. They need a rim protector. So Gafford would fill that role and also fit the timelines of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Why? Because Tatum right now is 27. He'll be 28 this year. Jaylen Brown will be 29. So by the time Tatum returns to this roster next offseason, those guys are going to be pushing close to 30, which means Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are in their prime seasons. So they don't want to waste years and have another gap season and having to rebuild. It's important for Brad Stevens to take his current roster with these young guys around and flip them for talent that fits the timeline of Tatum and Brown. Look, I'm sure Hugo Gonzalez can play, but if I get an experienced point guard who's had playoff battles, who's been there before, I'm flipping him. Why? Because it fits the timeline of Brown and Tatum. You don't want a situation where you're focused on your future and 2 guys on your roster that are trying to win championships right now. You don't want that to happen. So when Brad Stevens looks at this roster, you got to go back to 2021 and 2022 season where he was able to get a Derek White and brought him in to fit alongside Brown and Tatum. He brought in Brogdon for a lot of draft picks, and Aaron Nesmith. Now, Aaron Nesmith at the time showed flashes of potential, and that's what you're looking for in a Jordan Walsh or a Shireman, where they flash some potential and somebody will take them on to develop them. That's what you're looking for. And as soon as you do that, you pull the trigger and you flip them. If a guy like Namus Keita shows potential, but you don't trust him in big playoff moments, then you flip him for a veteran-like player in a Daniel Gafford, for example. Or maybe down the road, Bam Adebayo becomes available. I don't think the Heat would trade him to the Celtics, but maybe he's somewhere else, and the Celtics are able to pick up Bam Adebayo. And the reason I bring him up because he's really good friends with Jason Tatum. So Stevens just has to pay attention to that because he's done this in the past where he got Brogdon, brought him in, didn't work out. He shipped him off and got Drew Holiday. So you have to see it that way where one trade leads to another. The Celtics are known for drafting and trading. If you're expecting them to land a big time free agent, you're going to be disappointed. They're not going to get the big names. So it's important for Brad to be smart, capitalize on the trades available. I know he's trying to move off Simons. That might not happen unless he has a great regular season and he's able to get a lot more back during the trade deadline. Remember, he's an expiring contract. So it's going to be attractive to some team out there who wants to shed some salary. Maybe you talk to the Cleveland Cavaliers for a moment and see if they want to move off some pieces because they're heading towards the second apron. I don't know if that's realistic, but something to keep in mind. When it comes to the best case scenario for this Boston Celtics team, I would say they can land in the top 10 in the draft and they can flip that for an established role player, and they can capitalize on that situation. And on top of that, one of their young guys shows flashes of potential, a team shows interest, and they pick up another championship level player who can fit the timelines of Brown, White, and Pritchard and Tatum. That is what they're looking for. Don't rely on these young guys to develop for 2 or 3 seasons because now you're wasting time with Tatum and Brown. They get frustrated, and now they want out of Boston. You don't want that situation to take place. So I think the best case scenario this season is number one, Payton Pritchard has a great season. Brown does well. White does his thing. And Shireman, Walsh, Amari Williams, or Hugo Gonzalez show flashes of potential and growth. Or Namus Keita has moments where he is looking really good for a stretch of 10 to 15 games. And Brad Stevens can flip them for more reliable talent to help Tatum and Brown push for another championship. How long do I think this could take? Realistically, in my personal opinion, I think it could take 3 seasons before we see the Celtics make a run at the NBA Finals. And the reason why I say that, number one, Achilles injuries don't just heal overnight, and Tatum has to get used to getting back in shape, getting used to working on that Achilles. You have to hope he stays healthy. So as long as he's healthy, they'll be fine, but it might take him 2 seasons to get used to it. So it gives Stevens next offseason and the following one to get this roster revamped and built to go after a championship. So it could take 3 seasons before we see the Celtics back in the NBA Finals. That's just my personal opinion, but I think that's best case scenario. If they get there sooner, I'm fine with that. I don't mind being wrong as a Celtics fan. I just think we got to be realistic with rebuilding the roster because remember, when you bring in role players and you're going after a championship, you got to build reps together and experience. So maybe they go through a playoff run where they get knocked out in the conference finals next year. You know, Tatum comes back and he's ready to go, but they're not quite there yet to get over the hump. So maybe that group needs more experience together, and then you go after it again. It does happen. We saw that version of Marcus Smart. We saw Williams on this team, and they made the NBA Finals, and then they lost in the conference finals a year later, and Brad Stevens had to tinker with the role players, and that's fine. So we'll see how it all plays out. I'd love to hear your thoughts about the Boston Celtics. What is the best case scenario when it comes to this upcoming season in the gap year? And when do you think they're going to be contending for championships again? Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.